Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and empowers you to live a more vibrant second half. Today, if you find us on YouTube, please don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss any more of these conversations. And if you happen to be driving and listening on a podcast platform, please remember to subscribe and share this conversation so we can build our midlife and beyond community strong. My guest today wants to have extraordinary conversations around creating change, about our age and our potential, considering how can you have an impact? How can you make a change in your world? And where do you feel that you still have the ability to live the life that you desire? My guest today is Terry Yoffe. She's a coach and the host of Extraordinary Work, Conversations About Creating Change podcast. Terry, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Gina. I am so excited and so thrilled, and I'm honored to be here.
Fantastic. Terry, why don't you give us a little snapshot of why you are so passionate about this idea of creating change?
Gina, I think without knowing it, I've been creating change all my life. Even as a kid, I remember one instance where I had a friend that nobody else wanted to be friendly with. She was somewhat deaf, and I befriended her. And in that, we created change. I remember that so vividly. And even in growing up and later on, I was always a nice person. A lot of people aren't as kids and as, teenagers. And it was very difficult for me because I think I was sensitive and I cared and I could see and I reached out. And I've been really fortunate in my life. I think if I look back, I was in the media world. And even there, where it's dog eat dog, I still looked out for my clients. Even if the company wasn't interested in what I was doing, and they kind of almost put kiboshes on things, I still looked out for my clients. I wanted to create change for them, even if it's in their advertising. And I was very well rewarded by them because I got so many and I was known as a really wonderful salesperson. And I think as life went on, I became a coach. 20 years to help create change in people. And it's so rewarding to watch them at any level, whatever they come with. It's about how can they create change so they can get to where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up in 2020 and said, okay, what else can I do? And I thought about podcasting. And synchronicity, as it would have it, one of my former clients was working on doing a legacy for her company, for herself. What could she do? So she created that. And I was the first person with another coach to do a few webinars. And then I did podcasts with her. That's how it started. And in 21, I worked with somebody to create my website, my podcast, my site and everything. And January of 22, I was doing a podcast.
Yeah. And how long have you been independent from like the corporate world?
I left the corporate world in 97 and realized I wanted to play in my own sandbox. And my husband had been telling me for years, go off on your own, become a entrepreneur in sales. I finally got to a point where I said, okay. And I did. I became a solo practitioner, a hired gun for people that needed sales help, but didn't have it. And I thrived and I did wonderfully. And I did wonderfully because people knew who I was. I had a great reputation and I got a lot of business until that dried up.
Yeah. And so how old were you when you moved into the coaching?
Oh, I was in midlife.
Mm-hmm.
I was in midlife. And every time I try something new, my husband looks and he says, okay, she's doing something different now. And after being a salesperson and being on the higher up, the top of my game, I had to start at the bottom in the basement. I had to go back to get a certificate. And then I took on a 6-month certification program and passed. Certification, 6 months, an oral and a written exam. And then, okay, where do I go from here? How do I build a business? People knew me in sales. They didn't know me as a coach. Perseverance over the years. I joined the ICF, the International Coach Federation, New York City chapter, and went from secretary to president of the chapter. And I also, with an organization called AWNY, Advertising Women of New York, I helped founder a mentoring program, and again, I wasn't 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did a remarkable job. We became the gold standard for mentorship. So all of this was when I was older. I try not to let age define me.
Well, you talked about perseverance, and I think a lot of us come to this middle of the life and there's a lot going on. And to pause and take the time to persevere in the curiosity around what do I want to do next? I mean, I find that most people that I talk to, not necessarily on my podcast, but just in general, they don't really know exactly what to do next. Like they get this sense of like, well, I'm kind of done with that, or this season of my life has definitely ended. And there's always this curiosity around, now what, right?
Now what? Exactly. And I guess I was fortunate in that when I left, because I had a husband that kept encouraging me. He said, go off on your own, become a hired gun. I said, no. I love the golden handcuffs of a company. And when I decided to leave, it was okay. And not long after, those people came to me and said, do you want to come work for me? I'd love to have you. I can't afford to pay you full time. I said, perfect. By the time I left my company, I use the metaphor, I got in this little rowboat and I started moving away from that shore, which was scary. And I kept looking back and wanting to reach back there because we don't know what the next shore is going to bring. If we don't see it, smell it, feel it, why are we doing it? And I just moved across, and synchronicity, I had a great business, a great little entrepreneurial business. I think I was always an entrepreneur, even when I worked in companies in sales. I had my own quota. I had my own this, my own that. So I kind of ran my own show.
I think it's interesting. You use the analogy of getting into a rowboat and moving away from the shore. I think that's a good word picture for change. When we want to do something new and different, there's a leaving something and getting into something else. So the analogy would be off the shore into a rowboat, off the cruise ship into a rowboat, whatever it is. But let's talk about the elements of creating change in your life. What are some of those strategies that you might offer someone who is still in the boat on the shore? How can you help them get into the rowboat?
And I might have been scared to death, right? I'm sure I was, because I was at this company for 11 years. Had a paycheck, I had health insurance, I did phenomenally well. But I got to a place where, okay, I got to go play in my own sandbox. I don't like your rules anymore. And I don't know, maybe I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it. I just got in and I said, I don't want this. And I'm not sure what that is, but I'm sure I can create something. I think you have to believe in yourself. It's not like I was going off without the skills, the experience, and the expertise that I had for all the years that I worked in the media world. And I think even before that, I had had another small company that people found me, and I was in fashion at that time. And I said, you know, what's the worst? And I still believe this. What's the worst thing that could happen? I don't do that. I'll find this. I think it comes with a belief in yourself. And that took me years to get there. I didn't grow up with any of that. I had to find my own way. And perseverance, being tough on the inside. You know, I always, if I was up against a wall, a door always opened. Synchronicity. And I think we're never too old. And this was all, again, I wasn't 20 to say, okay, I'm going to believe in myself. I have this bank of nuggets, as I call them, you know, what you've gathered, what you've learned, and take that. Unless you're going to, you know, you're going to plan to be a rocket scientist, which I knew I wasn't going to be, and say, I have value, I have worth. If I don't do this, I will veer and do something else. And I think that has to be an attitude that you make a mistake, okay, find another path. And we have to believe in ourselves that we're worth something, even if we're 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, whatever it is today. We have value. We're needed. And if you can hold on to that and get in the boat rather than talk about getting in the boat, you know, people say, oh, I'm going to tomorrow, I'm going to get tomorrow. And they never do. And then they wonder, I don't understand why I'm stuck. Right? They don't take action.
I think there's a need to be able to be comfortable not knowing, not having an exact map from point A to point B. And what you do have is your desire, your knowledge, your expertise, like you said, and a vision for what direction you want to go. Because to your rowboat analogy, you get in the rowboat, it's not a direct row to the other shore. There's going to be wind, there's going to be waves, there might be whales, you know.
Exactly.
And so this idea of creating change and growth in our lives is really a conversation about how willing are we to step outside of our comfort zone. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I tell my clients, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, if you don't have plan A, what's plan B? Always have a kind of a plan B. It's the new normal. I did a whole webinar on that, because so much changes.
Mm-hmm.
And even without that, what we saw with the pandemic, everything kind of just went up. And we had to figure out, well, I had this great plan, but that's not going to work anymore. When I was in therapy, my therapist said to me, you have like this scout in your mind. It's always going up ahead to see what's there and to look out and to see if it's okay for you to move in that direction. Even when I started my podcast, and I only did it last year, everyone thought, podcast? What are you, crazy? Again, I'm not 30. I said, I'm doing it. And I always tell myself, it doesn't define me. If it doesn't work, so what? It's not going to define my career.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried it. So it's about being willing to be uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
and try things. If they don't work, try something else. As we were saying, I just read an article where people in their 80s were still working, more to be wanted and needed,
Mm-hmm.
and to make a difference because they have the expertise to do that and not to let age get in the way. I mean, I still think I'm 12. That's my mindset. I try not to hold on to my age.
It's fascinating because when we have these ideas around who we are and what we've done, and life has been good, right? Like you said, you were happy in that job, you were successful in that job, and reminding ourselves that we come to this point, wherever it is in midlife or beyond, with a certain set of skills, abilities, knowledge, just the wisdom that we bring from our former life if we're headed creating this change. While we need to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, there's, I think, less risk than we perceive in the change, right? It's just scary because maybe we've done 20 years of this one thing with little variances. So I feel like we could address the topic around fear as well.
I think we all have fears, and certainly as a coach, and I'm sure I try to work with clients on what's the fear, what's underneath, what's going on. And I think most times people feel they're inadequate. People will laugh at them. They won't be successful. All the normal things that go along with fear, or I'll get the job, I won't know how to do it. I'll make a fool of myself.
Right.
And that stops them. That mindset stops them from ever doing anything. Because, okay, I'm not going to do it. So it's about not listening to that little voice, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't want you to do it, and saying, okay, what would it take for me to do it? So I don't do it perfectly. In coaching, we had an expression, there's no such thing as failure, it's only feedback. And if you can look at it that it's not failure, maybe it's not the right road you're on. Maybe you need to pivot, right? And go somewhere else. But fear is definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, it's a given. It becomes overpowering and stops you if you buy into it. So how do you take that fear and say, okay, I'm fearful, put it on the side, and then say, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to try it.
Mm. I think fear can be a great motivator if we combine it with kind of a curiosity. Like, why do I feel uncomfortable with this?
Mm-hmm.
What is it about it? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I think that's a fair question, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst thing that can
Right,
happen?
exactly. What's the worst that can happen? I look like a fool, right? I can't do the job. I'll flop. Whatever it is, get it out there and say, okay, okay, okay. And so what? But don't give it the power.
Mm.
Don't give it the power to stop you from trying what you want to try. Because that'll be it. If it has power over you, you won't win.
Yeah. And that's probably where the fear starts to creep in, right? Like that we will be overpowered by something, either the failure, the judgment maybe we assume that other people have, because it's a bit like trying out for something in high school. It has that same feeling of you worry so much about what other people are thinking. Although I must say that one of the beauties of hitting a certain age is you do care less. And I think that's a great thing to tap into when you're making a change, right? Tap into the I don't really care what other people think, because we get one shot at this, and why not try?
Right. You get naysayers, who, oh, why are you doing it? What are you, crazy? I say, they're not worth being your friends. You want to surround yourself with positivity, not negativity. People that are going to, oh, what are you doing that for? Why are you doing it? You're crazy. Aside from what goes on up there, here's a perfect example. I was in the fashion industry for years. I did fashion shows, I did presentations, and I got a call from somebody I knew at Women's Wear, the publisher, and said, I have a spot open. The New England manager. What do you think? I had no sales experience. I had no idea. I said, sure. Hired me. I took a $600,000 territory in 3 years to $1.3 million. I could have said no because, oh God, I don't know sales. Why would I do this? Oh my, bah. I said, okay. And I found out I was a really good, this is before I went to the company that I was at for 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was really good at what I did because I had great people skills. And I had the wherewithal, the perseverance to get in and see people. Even if I couldn't get in, I'd figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
And that's what made me good at what I did. I never took no for an answer.
That's probably a good principle too. Don't take no for an answer from yourself or anyone else, because to the question before, what have you got to lose? if we're more open to the possibilities and what they hold for us, that can be a helpful strategy, I think, to turn the focus away from the questions about fear, right? And all of those things, and turn them toward, but what if? But what if it works out? What if I'm good at it? What can I learn from this? Maybe treat it more like an experiment and less like a black and white, it's all good, all
Absolutely.
bad, you know?
Absolutely. I agree. If I would have said no, the whole trajectory of the next X years would never have happened.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the things I've said to coaching clients is, okay, you already know what this decision, this path, this attitude, this habit, you already know where it's taking you because you've already done it. And if it's not meeting a need, or if you're not happy with it, you're going to have to make a change. To your point, extraordinary conversations around change. And so if what you're doing is no longer satisfying, or it's no longer fulfilling, or you have that feeling of you need something different, well, you already know this path. So why not take a step 1 degree off even? It doesn't have to be dramatic, right? To
Right.
see where these things might take you. And to your point, before we hit record, you were talking about like volunteering and things like that. Change doesn't have to come necessarily in career, right?
Not at all. Not at all. Really, not at all.
I mean, we've talked about that in this moment, but let's talk about other ways people can create change in their lives.
I have my latest podcast. I have a woman on. She's very comfortable, has an incredible insurance business. It's not enough for her. Her mission, she created another business called Sparkle Business, and she helps underprivileged women start their own businesses. Or she does something with community where they pick 60 families of underserved people where the kids need backpacks. She didn't have to do all that. She has a great career. She could be sitting on a beach sipping mint juleps with her business and her life. And yet her purpose and her mission is to be out there creating change and helping people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of my podcasts talk about people that, if it's not their own work, that are really reaching out. And if you don't have a business anymore, what can you do? What volunteering? What gives you purpose? What gives you fulfillment? You know, if you love kids, how can you work with kids, you know, and help them read? That was one. If you like being, you know, in a soup kitchen, these are just what comes to mind, but there's many, many organizations that need people, volunteers, to help create change in someone's life and, you know, in their corner of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
not, you know, people think of creating change, oh my God, you know, it's this big, but it doesn't have to be. It can be this small. And it gives you purpose and fulfillment. I think a lot of people that get older and have retired, they don't know what to do. People do golf. People do pickleball. They see friends. They have lunches, but yet something's missing. And, you know, it's certainly not for everybody. And I'm not saying your lifestyle isn't what you want, But for those that are looking for something more and looking for fulfillment, what can you do? You know, I still coach. I still do my podcasts. I could be retired if I want to be. I don't. I couldn't imagine. But somebody said to me recently, what if you gave up your podcast? I said, and what? Just hang out with older people, and I'm not putting anyone down. I love the people I meet. Every age, every area, and I learn something from them. So I'm learning and I'm growing. Look, this isn't for everybody, right, Gina? Some people want to just do nothing, sit under a palm tree, and that's wonderful. I am not in any way making them wrong for what they want.
But for those of us who are not satisfied,
right,
it's our prerogative to say, just like you want to sit on your porch swing with a mint julep or a tea, I don't want that. And it's okay both ways, is what I hear you saying.
Exactly. I am certainly not on a pulpit telling people how to live their lives. What's great for one person, like me, would not be what somebody else wants. And that's perfectly fine. But we all have to look inside and say, what do I really want?
Yeah. You know, this is the thing that is important for us to remember, is we can agree to disagree on this. In other words, if you have friends who don't understand the way you're living your life, or family members who don't agree with the way you're living your life, they don't understand it. Like, to your point, why aren't you retiring? Why aren't you doing this? And I've had, there's been a point where my mom was like, when are you going to slow down? And my thought was, I may not, because I like to your point, meeting new people, learning new things. Like, that's something that's like lifeblood for me. And I think when we're talking about creating change in our own lives, you talked about it doesn't have to be global. It can be something very small, but if you drop a pebble into water, it creates ripples. And I think if we can just look for the pebbles instead of thinking we have to deal with boulders in our lives, maybe some of that fear can dissipate and it'll be a little less intimidating to make change in our lives.
Exactly. Absolutely. You're absolutely right on many levels.
Yeah, I find that when I'm helping someone, and you may relate to this, it really comes down to the kinds of questions we ask ourselves, moving away from judgment. Why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense. What if it doesn't work? Those kinds of things. And moving to healthier questions like, what can I do? What's my next best step? What if this works? Let me see if, do I like it? Right? When you're making change, I think we need to go back to that place of understanding ourselves or learning ourselves again, because we're very much different in many ways than we were when we started our journey as adults, right?
Right.
It's like a whole nother adulthood. At least that's how I feel about it. What's your perspective on that?
I think we each have to look at our own lives and think about what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. And as we talked about, people work their whole lives. They say, oh, I want to retire to wherever and just do nothing. And that's fine. And then there are the oddballs, where I'm not done yet. I have a message that I want to promote. And it's no matter what age you are, you can create change, and whatever that means. And I think you're right. We have to look inside and say, what's going to make me happy? What's going to fulfill me and bring me a purpose? Whatever that purpose is. And everyone's got something different. I don't have any hobbies. Doing this is kind of a hobby in a way, you know. Coaching is what it is. I have a small boutique business at this point, and my podcasts take up a lot of my time, and I love it. So, to your point, I think we all have to look within ourselves.
Well, and I do think that sometimes there is something back there that we've thought about that we just haven't had the courage to hold a space for. Have you found that to be true for some people? Like, it's not that they don't know, it might be more of they don't know if they can.
People have desires. The dialogue could go, I would love to be, my mother-in-law started painting in her 50s. My house is full of her paintings. They're beautiful. She started doing that and became amazing at it, and did it until she couldn't anymore, and did an amazing job. She was done working and then looked at, what can I do? I think what happens sometimes is people say, oh, I would love to write, take a writing course or write. And then it'll be, you're not good at that. Why would you even try it? Right? But that gets in the way. And they go, okay, I guess I'm not going to try it. And perhaps some of their wants or desires get thrown in the trash, so to speak. And they just don't go for it. Someone might say, you know, my husband is retired. He wants to travel all the time. I guess I'm going to give up all of that to travel. I am having that. My husband retired. He was a workaholic and wants to travel. I said, okay. We looked at calendars. I couldn't go. I said, go yourself. And I will figure out how to figure both out. Nobody's asking me to give up my passion. But sometimes couples or people feel, if this one's retired, I guess I better go along. Or vice versa. You know, we've been married, and what can I do? Maybe, you know, whatever. And then whatever they want to do gets squashed.
So, Terry, if you had to give 3 kind of anchor points for people who want to create change in their life or start a conversation around creating change with themselves or with other people, what 3 things would you offer them?
Certainly one, if you want to figure out how to create change, if you have a good friend that's in your corner and is a positive person, go speak to them, have a conversation, have a dialogue, because they'll encourage you to do something. Don't be afraid. You're not starting over. You've got skills, you've got experience, you've got expertise of years. Take it. If you want to do a writing course, I took a writing course and started writing a book. Didn't get far, but I started. See what sparks your attention. What gives you joy in your life. If you're doing things that are not giving you joy, don't do them. Really, have a conversation with yourself and be honest. What do you want to do? Dig down. Don't be afraid if you get in that rowboat. Go. It'll take you someplace. Maybe a different shore, a different opportunity. Just don't be afraid. Go for it. Have confidence. You are worth it. You spent your years working. You have value. You know, you have currency. Go do it. And life changes when you, even if you get in a rowboat and going a block away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things change. I only talk for myself. I wouldn't be doing my podcast. I wouldn't have taken that job at Women's Wear. I would have said, if I thought, oh my God, I can't do it, and let everything go. I said, yes, say yes. And then go from there. I think that's more than 3.
Well, Terry, how can people find you?
Oh, goodness. I have a website, Terry. It's www.trycoaching.com. From there, you can go and find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I have a TV show on YouTube called Coaches Creating Change, if you want to find out more about me.
Okay, awesome. Well, Terry, thank you so much for being on the show today and bringing your passion and your insight into change and the wisdom that you bring from the years of life that you've lived, and by time testing and personally testing these principles that you're sharing. I really appreciate your example and you taking the time to share that with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, really. Thank you so much, Gina. I have so enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Friends, today, if you find us on YouTube, just look down below. The links that Terry has will be down there. If you're on a podcast platform, just head on over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 345, and all the links, it will be there in the show notes. Today, this conversation has been around creating change in our own lives, having the courage to step out and try something new, and not being afraid to fail, but being curious about where this next step might lead you. There are so many things that we are still capable of, and this idea that our age is a limit is the paradigm that Terry and I brought to the table to create a different think about. Right? Think about this differently. So we want to challenge the idea that age equals invisibility or disappearing or lack of ability. Our abilities do change as we age, but that does not limit our possibility. So we encourage you, if you are like us and you want to continue to experience life on a different level and experience new and different things, we encourage you to hold a space for that and give it a shot and get yourself a community of people of like mind so that you have that group courage to attempt some new things and find out what more you are capable of doing in this world. Thank you so much for being with us today. I look forward to sharing more inspirational people, strategies, and resources with you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.